Financial planning for business owners is completely different than financial planning for employees. The problem is there are more employees than there are business owners. So most financial advisors out there work with employees and they take that information and they try and regurgitate it for business owners, and it ends up not working, and business owners see through that. I talked with a business owner the other day who's met with probably 10 financial advisors in the last 10 years. He said every single one of them, he came away from it feeling like they didn't understand him and they didn't understand what was important to him. And my guess is that he was probably talking to advisors that mostly worked with employees. And so the questions they talked about, the things they talked about were not the same things that was going on in his head. Because though most employees may have families, they don't have to worry about making payroll every 2 weeks. Whereas the business owner has their own family and then they also have employees to take care of. So the stress that is on business owners is just so much more. So because of that, we've built at Mills Wealth Advisors a plan that is built to help business owners build clarity, confidence, and connection with their finances. We've found that most business owners have things all over the place. They might have real estate here. They might have a business here. They might have another business over here. They might own some private equity over here. And the problem is none of them are connected and they feel stressed out because they don't know what's going on. So in this video, I'm gonna do my best to give you some things to think about and some actions to take to help you take all of this that's disconnected and bring it together and have all of your finances work together for your good so that you're not stressed, you're not worried, but you have clarity, confidence, and connection between all of the things in your finances. If you don't know yet, my name is Steven Nelson. I'm a certified financial planner. I'm also a certified exit planning advisor and an accredited investment fiduciary. Those are a lot of numbers after my name. That means I've done a lot of research and learning to be a better advisor. Now I want to start back with my friend Mark, who told me that he's talked with many advisors and never felt comfortable. And what I found from our conversation with him was that by asking the right questions to him, it helped him feel like he was understood and it spoke to the way that he felt. So I want to start off telling you the 5 different questions that I think every business owner needs to think about. So the first question that I want you to take out and write down your answer to is, what does your ideal future look like? I have business owners who tell me that they never plan to retire. They might slow down, but they don't plan to retire. I have others that run so hard that they're like, one day I just can't wait to do nothing. And then there's others who say, you know what, I'm gonna work as hard as I am right now until I can. And each one of those is fine, but as a business owner, each one of those is gonna require a little bit different planning. So the first thing to think about is, what does your ideal future look like? I want you to write it down in detail. I retire at this age, I'm doing these things, or I slow down at this age and I'm doing these things. But if you don't know what your ideal future is, you can't really plan for it. Now I'll take you back to my friend Mark. When I asked him this question, he told me that of all of the businesses he had, he's got 6 of them. Of all of those 6 businesses, there's really one that is like his pet project that he would want to continue to do that forever. So for him, he kind of already knew that he wasn't going to stop working, but there was 5 of them he probably wouldn't, and there's one that he would focus on, but he would always continue to work. Now, the second question I want you to think about is, what is your goal with each and every one of your entities? Is it to sell it to the highest bidder? Is it to pass it to your kids? Is it to shut it down because there is no potential value? Or is it something you're going to continue to work on, like Mark on that one business? But for each one of the entities or real estate or whatever you have, I want you to think about, do I want to sell it to the highest bidder? Am I going to leave it to my kids? Am I going to just fold it and just let it go? Or am I going to keep it and kind of manage it on my own? And kind of a final thing is, are you going to run with it hard or slow? But the second question is going to be, what are you going to do with each and every one of those entities? I already told you the answer for Mark. His answer was 5 of them he would get rid of, he would sell. The other one he would hold on to and he would continue with it. Now, the third question that separates business owners from employees is this question: what would happen if you didn't wake up tomorrow? You might be married like me and say, if I didn't wake up tomorrow, there's no way that my wife would come in here and be a wealth advisor. She doesn't have the skills, she doesn't have the time, and most of all, she just doesn't have the desire. This is not something she would want to do. So if something happened to me tomorrow, my business would basically just fold. No one would really step in. I mean, I have other advisors, but they kind of run their own stuff. And so my clients would be taken care of, but there wouldn't be much to sell. What I would need is a succession plan. Now, if you're like Mark and you have 6 different businesses, he's going to need to know, maybe there's one company that if he didn't wake up tomorrow, the company would run just fine. Maybe they already have an agreement in place on what would happen. There might be another one that there's no agreement in place and there is no one that could step up. So you need to think about each and every one of these different businesses that you have. What happens happens if you don't wake up tomorrow? Is there a succession plan in place, number one? Number two, also, what is the exit going to be on that? Because it could be that you're going to have a life insurance policy that is going to create income for 2 years to go hire a new president of the company, to run the company, to basically sell it so that your wife or your husband gets paid out. So the succession plan is not just who, but it's also how. How is that succession plan gonna happen? And you don't have to know the answers to all of those. That'll be in like a future video. But you just need to know in each one of these, do I have a succession plan? Is there someone who could take over? And if not, we probably need to go find that, or we need to develop a plan of how you're gonna find that person. The third thing is to think about what would happen if you were sick or injured and weren't able to continue to come in. It's a little bit different than if you were to pass away because you're kind of still around. But it is different in the sense that maybe you can't come into work. And I know most people, whenever I bring this up, they're like, oh, I'll be just fine. If I don't have my arm, I'll still come in. If I can't walk, I'll still come in. Well, I have a cousin who was in a car accident. And from this car accident, anytime he would look at a computer screen, he would get a migraine. Now, he was an attorney, spent a lot of time looking at a screen, and every time he did, he'd get a migraine. So he was unable to work, even though he had the desire to work. And so you need to make sure that not only if you were to pass away, what would happen, but if you were, let's say, sick or injured and couldn't work for a period of time. So in this situation, it may not be someone to take over the company. They just need to do some of the roles that you do. What if you were only able to do half-time, quarter time? Is there someone at the company that could help with that? And if not, how can you provide that? Could it be someone from one of your other companies could spend some time on this company that really needed the help? But it's very important that you determine what would happen if you weren't able to come into work tomorrow. A very real possibility could be something like disability overhead insurance, where if you're unable to work and if you are the prime rainmaker for the company, if revenue stops coming in, what disability overhead insurance does is it helps make sure the lights stay on, pays the employees, and it allows the company to kind of limp along until you're able to come back. So that's one of the things that could potentially be a fit to your problem. So the fourth thing that separates business owners from their employees is a second set of finances. Most employees, they either have themselves or someone else that they're taking care of, and so they have their house finances they have to take care of. When you're a business owner, not only do you have your house finances, but you have the company finances. It's hard to determine what should your working capital be? How much should you have in savings? Can you invest with company money, or does it need to sit in a bank account? How much money should you pay yourself each time? How much stays in the company? How much do you pay yourself? All of those are questions you have to ask yourself that most employees don't have to ask themselves. Problem is that typically business owners ignore one or the other. They either ignore their business finances and only focus on their personal finances, or they ignore their personal finances and only worry about the business finances, thinking that if I get the business finances right, everything's going to be fine on the personal side. Then they end up down the road with no personal savings and potentially a business that may not be sellable. So it's important as a business owner to make sure that you have both your business and personal house in order. So in this scenario, I want you to ask yourself, do I feel like both sides of my financial house are being taken care of, both the business and the personal, or am I focused on one or the other, or neither? Neither could be an answer. But the question you have to ask yourself is, which one are you focusing more energy on? And if you're doing a good job on both, kudos to you. But I very rarely find any business owner that's doing a good job on both. I want you to think and say, am I doing good personal or business? And if you're doing better on one than the other, you need to figure out what you can do on the other one to make sure that you're doing it right. And the things I think you need to always make sure you take care of is knowing what your working capital is. How much do you need to always have in the bank to pay the bills? And anything above that, I believe you should move over to the personal side. Now you can always move it back and loan money back to the company if you need to. We like to take the strategy of pay ourselves a salary. Every 2 weeks we make a salary, and then once a quarter we take a disbursement above whatever's in that working capital. So let's say I have $100,000 in the bank at the end of the quarter, and I know that my working capital is $50,000. I can take that other $50,000 and move it over to my personal side. And that's in addition to whatever I'm paying myself as far as a salary. So that way I'm making sure my bills are paid every single 2 weeks from my salary, but then I'm taking a distribution every quarter to do the extra. And if I ever need to loan money back because we have extra expenses, we can. But that's what we've found to work, is that quarterly bonus method where you're paying yourself basically a profit share. But you need to make sure that you get both your business and personal finances straight. Now, the fifth and final question that you need to ask yourself, it's a two-part question, kind of like the personal and business. But do you know what your profit gap is? And do you know what your value gap is? And if you don't know those, we need to find out what those are. So the value gap is figuring out what your business is worth worth, and then also figuring out how much you need to retire. So if we go back to number one and you say, hey, I'm gonna sell my business and never work again, this one's really important because you gotta know what that value gap is. Even if you're someone who may keep some of it, that's gonna come into a factor, is figuring out what your value gap is, because that's gonna factor into your retirement. But the value gap is basically the difference between what you can sell your business for and how much you need to retire on. So for example, if I have a client who all of his businesses combined is worth $5 million, and I run through and figure out what his retirement needs are, and we figure out it's $7 million, I now know that in addition to his $5 million business, I need to have $2 million of personal assets inside of investment accounts, retirement accounts, what have you. But his value gap is $2 million. It's the difference between 7 and 5. That's important as a business owner to know. The second one is the profit gap. And this one's a little bit harder to figure out, but the profit gap is figuring out where you're at today versus where you could be to get a higher multiple. What we know, and this comes from being a certified exit planning advisor, is that businesses that have better systems, are less reliant on the owner, and have like a succession plan and other things in place, tend to sell for a higher multiple than those who don't have that. So if you have poor accounting, if you don't have systems, if the business is completely necessitated on you making sales and you being there, that business is going to have a lower multiple than one where the business owner is not hugely valuable in sales, where their accounting systems are set up properly, and where they have systems in place that if the owner doesn't come in tomorrow, the business still runs. That company is going to sell for a multiple higher than the first one. So that profit gap is figuring out how much profit you need to increase, or what you need to do to increase that multiple. And if you can do that, you're going to make more money, and it's also going to increase that value gap. If your business is worth $5 million, but if you make more profit, if you have better systems, if you become less reliant on yourself, that could go from a $5 million sale to a $6 million sale just by changing those things. So question number 5 is, do you know your profit gap and do you know your value gap? So from answering these 5 questions, now you have information, but the key is, what do you do with it? And this is why you've probably met with advisors in the past who only work with employees and you haven't felt the connection with them because they weren't speaking the same language. So now you have this information and you have a plan for a business owner. The next step for you is to be able to confidently answer those 5 questions. And those aren't the only 5 questions. Those were the 5 questions I talked to Mark about. But if you can confidently answer the question, what is my ideal future? You can build a path to where you're going. The second question is, what if I don't wake up tomorrow? What's going to happen with my business or businesses? If you can answer for each and every one of them, I don't have someone, I have someone, I don't have someone, I have someone, you now can say, okay, what do I need to do to make sure that every single one of these ones, I can say I have someone? You probably need to have something in writing. You need to have a succession plan. Those are not easy to make, and that's why you probably don't have one. But you go and create a succession plan. Maybe you buy some sort of insurance, some life insurance, some disability insurance, so that it funds those and makes sure those are taken care of. But if you can say, yes, I have a succession plan now if something happens to me. And then the third question is, what if you're unable to work but you're still alive? You can, for each one of those businesses, know, well, I don't really play a huge role in business number 1, but I do in business number 6. You only have to focus on business number 6. And like I said, you might be able to do partial work. You might not be able to do full work. And so you need to have someone go and actually do some of the things. But if you can answer that, you can move on to the next question, question number 4. And question number 4 is about your finances. And the question is do I feel that I'm doing a good job on my personal or my business finances? And if the answer is no to either one of those, you're going to want to go figure out, what should my working capital be? How much should I pay myself weekly, bi-weekly salary? And then what should my profit share look like? And if you can answer what's your working capital and you pay yourself, you can probably figure out if there's going to be any kind of profit share that you can pay yourself on a quarterly basis. And then on the personal side, if you don't have structure on the personal side, I would recommend going and getting something like Monarch Money. There's another company called Origin that just came out that is a do-it-yourself financial tool. But looking at those and getting your budget right, making sure you know how much you spend and how much you make. And if you did the other side right, you should know how much you make. And if you can get that right, now you can start saving and building. And then question number 5, what is the value gap? It's figuring out, what is my business probably worth? It's going to be some multiple of your EBITDA, or some multiple of your net income, some multiple of your revenue. You're going to figure out what that business is worth. And then what you'll do is you'll use something like Origin or some other, I think Bolden is a company that you can use where they'll help build a financial plan. But it's basically figuring how much money you need today to be able to retire. You're going to take that that number and you're going to minus it by what your company value is. And now you're going to have your value gap, and you know what that amount is that you need to build up. It could be 1 million, 2 million, 500,000. I don't know. But now you know what number you need to have saved and invested on top of your business. Because I promise you, most business owners think, oh, I'm going to sell the business, it's going to be worth X amount. The problem is most of us think that our business is worth more than it might be to somebody else. It's like your neighbor, you go look at their house and they've got it listed at 1.5 and you're like, I wouldn't pay $1 million for that house, because there's all these things that they think are so fantastic and great that the other buyers don't find them. So the sad fact is most business owners overinflate what they think their business is worth. So we need to really be harsh on ourselves and figure out, what is this business really worth? How much do I need to retire? I take how much I need to retire minus what my business is worth, and I get my value gap. And now I know how much I need to have invested, saved, so that I can retire. And then the profit gap, that comes down to how reliant is the company on you as the owner? How are your systems? How is your accounting? And what's your profitability? And if we can figure those out and we can say, well, if I can make one or each of them better, now all of a sudden that business that's worth 5 million is now worth 6 million, 7 million. And now you don't even have to have money on the side. You still probably should for liquidity purposes, but it may be less. But now going through all of that, you're going to have a better view of what your finances need to be as a business owner, as opposed to W-2 employee, which really boils down to spend less than you make, save in the 401k, maybe get some real estate on the side, but there's not much else that they can do. Where you have all of these different things that you can do to make sure that your plan creates the best probability for you to retire comfortably and live the lifestyle you want to. And again, you may not want to retire. You may want to slow down and have one of those 6 businesses like Mark be what you focus on in retirement. So to bring this all back together, you may be like my friend Mark. You may have met many financial advisors out there that you never really connected with because they weren't speaking the same lingo. Hopefully you got some value from those 5 questions and some of the actions that you can take. I've said before and I'll say it again, we help clients create clarity, confidence, and connection to their money. And by following these 5 questions and these steps, I know for a fact you will if you haven't already done that before. Now, if you've made it this far in this video and this doesn't feel like something you want, that's totally fine. This whole video was a how-to. So what I would love to ask for you is 1, subscribe, and 2, comment what you'd like us to also talk about. What are some of the other things that you would like to see? You might be someone who wants to do it on your own, and so I'd love to give you information to help you do it on your own. That's what I'm here for. Not everyone needs to work with an advisor like me. I'm not the right fit for everybody, but I do want to share my knowledge and help business owners create a more clear, confident, and connected future. So thanks for spending 15 minutes, 20 minutes watching this, and I'll see you on the next one.